3 years ago, my stepdaughter threatened my son, physically attacked my daughter, and trashed our home. When I begged my husband to finally see what she was doing, he just laughed and dismissed me as hysterical. I stayed silent until last night, when the police showed up and took her away in handcuffs, and he could no longer deny the truth. I have 2 children, Sarah and Aiden. 9 years ago, my beloved husband passed away in a tragic car accident. I was utterly devastated. My biggest fear was for my children to grow up without a father, and I was terrified of being alone. 5 years ago, I encountered my current husband and his daughter, Elizabeth, at a friend's housewarming gathering. I was hesitant to pursue a new relationship, but I proceeded cautiously, ensuring he was a suitable presence for my children. I openly discussed my children's feelings with them at every significant stage, making certain they felt comfortable with my husband and my stepdaughter. When he proposed, I spoke with my children about their sentiments. They had only one request, and a promise was made. I would ensure that my children and I still had dedicated time together, just the 3 of us. I agreed to take my children out twice a month, with exceptions if necessary. Given that my children remembered their father and Elizabeth's mother was still actively involved in her life, we established a principle. Neither of us would attempt to parent our stepchildren. We would remain primarily responsible for our biological children. This was a conversation we had with all the children present. Our children were also permitted to choose how they felt about each other, whether they desired a sibling bond or something different. It was not a decision for my husband and me to make. Returning to the present, life settled into a comfortable routine thereafter. The children adapted well to our new normal, and I made sure to preserve our cherished traditions. I continued to take my children on outings twice a month for adventures, and also engaged in activities with Elizabeth. Yesterday, my husband approached me, stating we needed to discuss how Sarah and Aiden were treating Elizabeth. He cited instances of exclusive behavior, Sarah driving only Aiden, not inviting Elizabeth on her birthday trip, purchasing gifts solely for Aiden, and both children participating in activities Elizabeth did not enjoy. He blamed me for setting this precedent with my promise to my children and demanded I treat Elizabeth as my own. I declined, reminding him of our initial understanding, and pointed out that he did not act as a father to my children. I spoke with all 3 children individually last night and was astonished by what I discovered. At today's family discussion, Elizabeth spoke first, detailing how excluded she felt. Movie nights without her, refusing rides to school, Sarah fabricating her whereabouts, being left out of group chats, and feeling they disliked her. She expressed that she deserved a parent too, and it was unfair that we could be a family while she could not. Sarah inquired if Elizabeth genuinely felt less a part of the family. Before Elizabeth could respond, my husband instructed Sarah to read her own list. Sarah candidly described Elizabeth's actions, breaking into their rooms, taking their belongings, forcing herself into Sarah's social circle, threatening to report them if excluded, ruining Sarah's cosmetics, telling my children they should be glad their father passed away because now they had her dad, making inappropriate remarks about animated characters, insisting Aiden had a romantic interest in her, becoming physically aggressive with Aiden, throwing tantrums when losing games, expecting me to do everything for her, flirting with Sarah's boyfriend because sisters share everything, and being envious of their achievements. When I questioned Aiden if Elizabeth had truly tried to touch him, he hesitated, then confirmed it. Elizabeth denied it, but Sarah interrupted her, labeling her disgusting and spoiled, asserting their friends only tolerated her because Elizabeth coerced them, and warning that if she ever attempted anything with Aiden again, they would make her life miserable. I intervened to stop the threats. Elizabeth argued it was unfair that she and Sarah had similar interests but was treated worse because she was ugly. Sarah countered that it had nothing to do with appearance. Elizabeth was simply a bad person. Elizabeth then brought up how Sarah excluded her and refused to accept her and her father as family, stating they both had experienced parental loss. Sarah retorted, "My dad is gone. He's never coming back. Your mom is incarcerated. You communicate with her daily. It's not the same." Elizabeth insisted, "It is the same. I share my dad. You're just complaining that you have to share your mom now." Sarah fired back, "At least my dad didn't choose to abandon me. Your mom had a choice, and I can understand why she made it." Elizabeth slapped Sarah. Aiden punched Elizabeth. My husband shoved Aiden into a wall mirror. I shrieked at my husband to keep his hands off my children while instructing my kids to pack. They rushed off, with Elizabeth following, banging on their doors and weeping. After much shouting, my husband slapped me. Sarah began screaming at Elizabeth, and I discovered them fighting in my bedroom because Sarah was packing for me. I told Sarah to wait in the car. I packed while my husband and Elizabeth yelled at me, then departed. Sarah was in the driver's seat, so I allowed her to drive away before we swapped places. Paramedics transported him away while I followed in my car, my hands still trembling from the shock of what had just transpired. I spoke with Sarah and asked why she hadn't brought any of this up earlier. She informed me that Elizabeth only began acting that way after my husband had proposed, and both she and Aiden wanted me to be content because they had witnessed how despondent I was after my late husband's passing. This, of course, broke my heart. I told her that they were my happiness. Sarah contended that since I had made so many sacrifices, it was only fair that they did too. I assured her that she never needed to sacrifice anything for me, as I was their mother. Sarah began crying, apologizing, and simply stating she never intended for me to lose another husband and that she would never have allowed Aiden to be harmed. I continued to comfort her throughout the drive to our hotel. My children are asleep now. I am frightened. Neither my husband nor Elizabeth has contacted me. I am uncertain if I even want them to. I kept checking my phone, even though I knew they wouldn't call. The hotel room felt too small with all three of us squeezed in, but I couldn't afford 2 rooms, not with everything unfolding so rapidly. Sarah stirred on the bed next to Aiden, and I quickly dimmed my phone screen. A knock at the door startled me. I peered through the peephole and saw 2 police officers in the hallway. My stomach sank. I opened the door just a crack, keeping the chain fastened. The officers explained they needed to speak with me about the incident at my residence. Apparently, Elizabeth had called 911, alleging assault. I let them in quietly, not wishing to awaken the children. They took my statement while I showed them the bruises already forming on my arms from where my husband had gripped me. They photographed everything, including the mark on my face. Sarah awoke during the questioning. She immediately began defending Aiden, explaining how Elizabeth had been touching him inappropriately. The officers took notes and stated they would need to interview all the children separately at the station tomorrow. After they departed, Sarah couldn't fall back asleep. She sat at the small table, picking at the complimentary breakfast muffins we had obtained from the lobby earlier. Morning arrived too swiftly. We drove to the police station, where a detective interviewed each of us individually. Aiden finally opened up about Elizabeth's behavior, how she would corner him in hallways, touch his chest and arms, and make comments about his physique. The detective assured us they took these allegations seriously. My phone finally rang while we waited. It was my husband's sister, Nishi. She screamed at me for abandoning her brother at the hospital, claiming I was destroying the family. I ended the call when she began calling my children liars. 5 minutes later, my mother-in-law, Alexandra, called with the same accusations and anger. I blocked both numbers. The detective returned with unsettling news. Elizabeth also had injuries, and she was claiming my children attacked her without provocation. However, the detective stated the pattern of injuries on all involved parties supported our account of events. They would investigate the inappropriate touching allegations against Elizabeth and the assault charges against my husband. We couldn't go home. The detective advised us to stay away until legal matters were resolved. I contacted my brother, John, who resided 2 hours away. He immediately offered his guest room, no questions asked. During the drive, I finally informed the children about their father's family calling. Sarah took my phone and blocked every number she recognized from that side. John met us at his door with hot soup and warm embraces. His wife, Ally, had already prepared beds for everyone. While the children settled in, John and I sat at his kitchen table. He listened without judgment as I explained everything. When I finished, he simply stated we could remain as long as needed. The subsequent few days blurred together. I met with a lawyer specializing in family law and domestic violence cases. She filed for an emergency protective order and initiated divorce proceedings. My husband had been discharged from the hospital with a concussion from hitting his head when paramedics moved him. He had already retained his own legal counsel. Elizabeth's mother contacted me from jail. I almost didn't answer the unfamiliar number, but something prompted me to pick up. She apologized for her daughter's conduct, stating Elizabeth had always struggled with boundaries and jealousy. She had been in therapy previously but stopped when she moved in with us. The conversation concluded with her pleading with me not to press charges against her daughter. My lawyer advised me to document everything. Sarah assisted me in creating a timeline of Elizabeth's behaviors, including dates where possible. Aiden finally disclosed other incidents, such as Elizabeth sneaking into his room at night and sitting on his bed, or following him to friends' houses. Each revelation made me feel like a failure as a mother for not noticing it sooner. The custody dispute commenced immediately. My husband asserted I was alienating Elizabeth and turning my children against her. His lawyer portrayed me as an unfit mother who encouraged violence. My lawyer countered with the police reports, the documented injuries, and the investigation into Elizabeth's inappropriate behavior with Aiden. During a supervised visit at the courthouse, Elizabeth attempted to apologize to my children. Sarah refused to acknowledge her. Aiden concealed himself behind his sister. Elizabeth began crying, stating she just wanted a real family. The supervisor ended the visit early when Elizabeth grabbed Aiden's arm and wouldn't release him. My husband's family launched a social media campaign against us. They posted old, happy family photos with captions about how I had destroyed their family. Sarah's friends began sending her screenshots. Some individuals believed the posts and turned against us. Sarah lost several friends whose parents did not wish them associated with violent children. The school became involved when Elizabeth appeared, attempting to locate Aiden. Security had to escort her off campus. We had to arrange for the children to enter and exit through different doors and adjust their schedules to prevent any potential contact. The stress was impacting their academic performance, but their teachers were understanding. 3 weeks into staying with John, my husband appeared at the house. John would not permit him past the front door. My husband shouted accusations, demanded to see his children, and threatened legal action. John calmly instructed him to leave or he would contact the police. When my husband refused, John followed through. The police arrived and made him depart, but not before he had terrified my children, who watched from the window. The investigation into Elizabeth's behavior uncovered disturbing patterns. Other girls from her previous school came forward with similar accounts of boundary violations and inappropriate touching. Her therapist from before the divorce provided records demonstrating a history of attachment disorders and concerning behaviors that were never adequately addressed. My husband's concussion symptoms worsened, and he blamed us for his medical expenses and lost income. His lawyer sent demands for compensation. My lawyer responded with our own medical bills and therapy costs. The legal fees were depleting my savings, but I could not stop fighting. Elizabeth's behavior escalated. She created fake social media accounts to contact my children. She sent Aiden messages expressing her love for him and that they were destined to be together. She told Sarah that she would ensure Sarah never saw her mother again. We had to file cyber harassment charges and acquire new phones with new numbers. The family court judge ordered a psychological evaluation for all the children. The psychologist's report was damning for Elizabeth, confirming inappropriate sexual behavior, severe attachment issues, and manipulative tendencies. The report recommended intensive therapy and no unsupervised contact with my children. My husband refused to accept the report. He accused us of bribing the psychologist and demanded a second opinion. The judge denied his request and issued a restraining order protecting my children from both him and Elizabeth. He was only permitted supervised visits in a court facility, which he refused to attend. 2 months after departing, we finally received permission to return home to gather our belongings. Police escorted us. The house was in disarray. Elizabeth had destroyed the children's rooms, cutting up clothes, breaking toys and electronics, and spray painting horrifying messages on the walls. She had even ruined photo albums of my late husband. Sarah broke down upon seeing her room. Aiden became silent and would not speak for hours. Insurance covered some of the damage, but the emotional toll was immeasurable. We decided not to return to the house. I put it on the market and began searching for apartments near John. The children needed a fresh start, away from all the painful memories. My husband's lawyer made one final settlement offer. He wanted the house, no alimony, and for me to drop all charges against him and Elizabeth. In exchange, he would relinquish any claim to custody or visitation. My lawyer advised against it, but I was exhausted. The children were suffering. I countered with a demand for child support, Elizabeth's therapy costs, and our moving expenses. The final court hearing was brutal. My husband portrayed himself as a victim, asserting I had transformed his daughter into a monster with my favoritism. Elizabeth testified that my children had always disliked her, that she had only wanted to be loved. But when cross-examined about the inappropriate touching, she could not maintain her story. She finally admitted to everything but claimed Aiden had led her on. The judge's ruling was comprehensive. Full custody to me, restraining orders maintained, mandatory therapy for Elizabeth, and my husband ordered to pay for all therapy and damages. The divorce was finalized with me retaining most assets due to the domestic violence. My husband was also ordered to attend anger management and parenting classes before any future contact could be considered. As we departed the courthouse, Elizabeth broke away from her father and ran toward us. Security intercepted her, but she screamed that she was sorry, that she didn't mean any of it, that she just wanted a mom. My heart ached for the damaged child she was, but I had to prioritize protecting my own children. We relocated to a new town near John. The children enrolled in new schools where no one knew our history. Slowly, they began to heal. Sarah joined the drama club and made new friends. Aiden started playing soccer and finally smiled again. We still attended therapy, but the nightmares diminished. 6 months later, I received a letter from Elizabeth. Her therapist had assisted her in writing it as part of her treatment. She apologized sincerely this time, acknowledging the harm she had caused and accepting responsibility. She did not ask for forgiveness or contact, simply wanted us to know she was working on herself. I kept the letter but did not reply. My ex-husband remarried quickly to a woman with no children. Elizabeth lived with them but continued to struggle. We heard through mutual acquaintances that she had been expelled from another school for similar behaviors. I felt sorrow for her, but relief that we were free from that toxic situation. The twice-monthly adventures with my children persisted, now more precious than ever. We hiked, visited museums, tried new restaurants, and gradually rebuilt our sense of family. One evening, while preparing dinner together, Sarah embraced me and said she was proud of how I had safeguarded them. Aiden joined the hug, and for the first time in months, I felt like we had truly overcome the ordeal. The journey taught me that shielding my children meant more than keeping them physically safe. It meant believing them, validating their experiences, and choosing their well-being above any relationship. The guilt of not recognizing the warning signs sooner still troubled me, but my therapist reminded me that predators are adept at concealing their behavior. We established new traditions and boundaries. The children knew they could confide in me without fear of not being believed. We created code words for uncomfortable situations and regular check-ins about their feelings. The experience had traumatized us, but also strengthened us as a family unit. A year after everything began, we attended Aiden's soccer championship. As I watched my son score the winning goal and Sarah cheered from the sidelines, I realized we had rediscovered our happiness. The scars remained, but they no longer defined us. We had chosen each other, protected each other, and emerged whole. That night, as I tucked my children into bed in our new home, I knew we had truly secured our freedom. The next morning, my phone vibrated with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elizabeth's voice came through, soft and pleading. She said she had obtained my new number from a friend at her old school and needed to speak. Before I could hang up, she blurted out that her father was planning something, that he had been meeting with lawyers about reclaiming the house. I ended the call and immediately contacted my lawyer. Sarah noticed my distress over breakfast. When I explained, she grabbed her backpack and pulled out a folder. Inside were screenshots of social media posts from Elizabeth's new accounts, messages she had sent to mutual friends, and photos of Elizabeth lingering around Aiden's soccer practice. My daughter had been documenting everything without informing me. The messages showed Elizabeth inquiring about our new address, our schedules, which stores we frequented. I drove the children to school with extra vigilance, constantly checking mirrors. At work, I couldn't concentrate. My coworker Andra noticed and pulled me aside. I had confided in her weeks ago about our situation. She mentioned seeing a man who matched my ex-husband's description in the parking garage yesterday, just sitting in his car. My blood ran cold. That afternoon, I picked up the children early. The school secretary handed me an envelope that had been dropped off for me, with no return address. Inside was a single photo of our new apartment building, taken from across the street. On the back, in Elizabeth's handwriting, families should stick together. My hands trembled as I shoved it into my purse. We went straight to the police station. The detective who had handled our case was unavailable, but another officer took our report. He seemed less concerned, suggesting it might just be an attempt to reconnect. I showed him the documentation Sarah had collected, but he said without direct threats, there wasn't much they could do. The restraining order was still active, but proving violations required more evidence. John met us at his house that evening. He had installed security cameras after my ex-husband's last visit, and we reviewed the footage together. There, clear as day, was my ex-husband's car driving slowly past the house multiple times over the past week. In one clip, Elizabeth was visible in the passenger seat, taking photos with her phone. My lawyer filed for an emergency hearing regarding the restraining order violations. The court date was set for 2 weeks out. In the interim, she advised varying our routines, remaining vigilant, and documenting everything. I hired a security company to patrol our apartment complex, further depleting my savings. 3 days later, Aiden returned home from soccer practice visibly shaken. His coach had found him in the equipment room with Elizabeth. She had somehow gained access to school grounds wearing a volunteer badge. She had cornered him, touching his face, saying she missed him and that they belonged together. The coach had pulled her away and called security, but she had vanished before they arrived. The school implemented new security measures, requiring photo identification for all visitors and volunteers. They assigned a staff member to accompany Aiden to and from practice, but the damage was done. He began having nightmares again, waking up screaming about someone being in his room. I moved his bed into Sarah's room and slept on the couch where I could monitor the front door. My ex-husband's sister, Nishi, began appearing at my workplace. She would wait in the lobby, attempting to intercept me during lunch. She claimed she just wanted to talk, to resolve things for the family. Security eventually prohibited her from the building after she caused a scene, screaming that I was ruining her brother's life. Then came the letters, not explicitly threatening, but unsettling. They arrived at my office, at John's house, even at the children's schools. All from Elizabeth, all variations of the same theme. She was sorry, she had changed, she just wanted her family back. Each one mentioned specific details about our daily lives, proving she was observing us somehow. Sarah's new friend invited her to a sleepover. I contacted the parents, verified everything, and dropped her off. 2 hours later, Sarah called in tears. Elizabeth had appeared at the house, claiming to be Sarah's sister who was supposed to pick her up. The friend's mother had almost let her in before Sarah saw her through the window and screamed. They called the police, but Elizabeth left before they arrived. I withdrew both children from school for a week. We stayed with John and Ally, rarely leaving the house. My boss was understanding, but warned I couldn't take much more time off without jeopardizing my employment. The children were falling behind in their studies. The life we had painstakingly rebuilt was crumbling once more. During the emergency hearing, my ex-husband appeared with a new lawyer, a sharply dressed woman who immediately went on the offensive. She claimed we were paranoid, that Elizabeth was simply a troubled teenager trying to reconnect with her family. She presented character witnesses who testified about my ex-husband's community involvement and Elizabeth's progress in therapy. Our evidence seemed to diminish under her scrutiny. The photos could have been taken by anyone. The school incidents were Elizabeth's word against ours. The letters weren't threatening, just sad. The judge seemed swayed by their arguments, especially when Elizabeth took the stand, crying about how much she missed us, how sorry she was, how she just wanted to apologize in person. But then Sarah requested to speak. The judge was reluctant, but my lawyer insisted. Sarah calmly presented her documentation, including recordings she had secretly made of Elizabeth's phone calls. Elizabeth's voice was clear, discussing how she would make me pay for taking her dad away, how Aiden would eventually be hers, how she knew where we resided and when we were alone. The judge's expression changed. He ordered Elizabeth to undergo immediate psychiatric evaluation and extended the restraining order, but he also reduced some of the restrictions, permitting supervised phone contact if Elizabeth's therapist approved it. It felt like a partial victory at best. That night, John's security cameras detected movement in the backyard. By the time he investigated, whoever it was had departed, but they had left something behind, a photo album, water-damaged but recognizable. It was one of the albums of my late husband that Elizabeth had supposedly destroyed. Inside, all the photos of him had been replaced with pictures of my ex-husband. I couldn't sleep anymore. Every sound made me jump. I installed my own cameras in the apartment, downloaded safety applications on all our phones, and taught the children additional self-defense techniques. Sarah started carrying pepper spray. Aiden would not go anywhere alone. We were living in fear once more. My ex-husband's lawyer sent a formal letter demanding visitation rights, claiming the restraining order was excessive. She argued that keeping a father from his children was abusive. I wanted to scream that they weren't his children, but legally, after 5 years of marriage, he had some standing. My lawyer prepared for another confrontation. Then Elizabeth's mother called again from jail. She was being released early for good behavior and wished to meet. Against my lawyer's advice, I agreed. We met in a public restaurant, both cautious. She appeared older, worn down by incarceration. She apologized again for Elizabeth, then disclosed why she had truly called. She had been receiving letters from Elizabeth too, disturbing ones. Elizabeth blamed her for everything, stating if her mother had been present, she would have had a real family. But the letters also contained detailed plans about reclaiming us, about making us pay, about taking Aiden away. She had kept them all and handed them to me in a thick envelope. The letters were chilling. Elizabeth's obsession with Aiden had deepened into something darker. She wrote about their future together, about eliminating obstacles, about making Sarah disappear so she could take her place. Some pages were covered in hearts with Elizabeth plus Aiden, written obsessively. Others detailed our daily routines with frightening accuracy. I took everything to the police immediately. This time, they took it seriously. A detective specializing in stalking cases was assigned. She reviewed everything and confirmed what I feared. Elizabeth's behavior was escalating. The psychiatric evaluation ordered by the judge had revealed serious personality disorders and delusional thinking. My ex-husband refused to believe it. When confronted with the evidence, he accused us of forging the letters, of turning his ex-wife against him. He appeared at John's house again, demanding to see the originals. John called the police while I gathered the children in the back room. We could hear him screaming about his rights, about the conspiracy against him. The police arrested him for violating the restraining order. At his arraignment, his new lawyer argued it was a misunderstanding, that he was just a desperate father, but the judge had seen enough. Bail was set high, and additional charges were filed for stalking and harassment. Elizabeth's reaction was immediate. She posted videos online, crying about her dad being in jail because of lies. She tagged everyone she could think of, attempting to rally support. Some people believed her. We started receiving hate mail and phone calls, labeling us liars and home wreckers. I had to change our numbers again. The school increased security once more after someone called in a bomb threat during Aiden's soccer game. Everyone was evacuated while police searched. They found nothing, but the caller ID traced back to a burner phone purchased near Elizabeth's new school. She had an alibi, claiming she was in class, but I knew it was her. Sarah broke down one night, saying she couldn't tolerate it anymore. She missed her former life, her old friends, feeling secure. I held her while she wept, promising we would get through this. But privately, I wondered how much more we could endure. The constant vigilance was exhausting all of us. My lawyer suggested a drastic solution, filing for a permanent protective order that would essentially criminalize any contact from Elizabeth or my ex-husband. It was extreme and rarely granted, but given the escalation and evidence, she believed we had a chance. It would mean another court battle, more money I didn't possess, more time away from work. John and Ally offered to assist financially, but I couldn't accept more of their generosity. I took out a loan against my retirement savings instead. The children needed this to end. We all did. I filed the paperwork and prepared for the impending struggle. Elizabeth's therapist reached out, requesting a meeting. She couldn't share details due to confidentiality, but she hinted that Elizabeth's condition was more severe than anyone realized. She suggested we consider relocating far away, somewhere Elizabeth couldn't locate us. The thought of uprooting the children again broke my heart, but I began researching options. My ex-husband made bail with assistance from his family. His lawyer immediately filed countersuits, claiming defamation, alienation of affection, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He demanded damages that would bankrupt me. The legal documents accumulated faster than I could read them. Then came the night that altered everything. I awoke to the sound of shattering glass. Someone was in the apartment. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the couch and crept toward the children's room. Their door was ajar, and I could discern a figure standing over their beds. I flicked the light switch and saw Elizabeth holding scissors, reaching for Sarah's hair. I screamed and charged. Elizabeth turned, scissors raised, but I knocked them away with the bat. She lunged at me, scratching and biting. Sarah awoke and began screaming. Aiden leaped onto Elizabeth's back, attempting to pull her off me. John burst through the front door, having witnessed the break-in on his security application that I had given him access to. Together, we restrained Elizabeth until the police arrived. She was arrested, still screaming about how we had stolen her family. The children were traumatized but physically unharmed this time. The police took it seriously. Elizabeth was charged with breaking and entering, assault, and attempted assault with a weapon. At Elizabeth's hearing, the full extent of her delusions became apparent. She had been off her medication for months, convinced it was poisoning her. She believed Aiden was sending her secret messages through his soccer jersey numbers. She thought I was holding him captive, and she was rescuing him. The judge ordered immediate psychiatric hospitalization. My ex-husband's reaction astonished everyone. He accused me of staging the break-in, of drugging Elizabeth to make her act erratically. Even his own lawyer appeared uncomfortable as he raved about conspiracies and setups. The judge ordered him to undergo his own psychiatric evaluation. The permanent protective order was granted. Any contact from either of them would result in immediate arrest and prosecution. Elizabeth was committed to a secure psychiatric facility for a minimum of 6 months. My ex-husband was ordered to maintain a distance of at least 1,000 feet from us at all times. But the victory felt hollow. The children were more traumatized than ever. Aiden refused to sleep in his own bed. Sarah started pulling out her hair from stress. I took family medical leave from work to focus on their recovery, knowing it might cost me my job. We moved again, this time to a secured apartment complex with doorman and key card access. John helped us install additional locks and alarms. Every door and window was secured. We lived like captives in our own home, but at least we felt marginally safer. The hate mail persisted for weeks. My ex-husband's family portrayed us as villains who had destroyed a loving father and his troubled daughter. Some of Sarah's former friends reached out, but their parents would not permit them to maintain contact. We were outcasts in our own community. 3 months into Elizabeth's hospitalization, her mother reached out again. She had been granted custody and was relocating Elizabeth across the country once she was released. She promised to keep her away from us, to ensure she received the help she needed. It was the first genuine hope we had experienced. My ex-husband's evaluation revealed narcissistic personality disorder and delusional thinking. His family finally began to acknowledge the truth. Nishi called to apologize, stating she had noticed troubling behavior but disregarded it. Alexandra admitted Elizabeth had always been challenging, but she had blamed me instead of seeking help for her. Slowly, very slowly, we began to heal once more. The children returned to school with individual education plans to help them catch up. I found a new job with understanding employers. We maintained our security measures, but ceased living in constant dread. 6 months later, we received word that Elizabeth had been released to her mother's custody and moved to the opposite coast. My ex-husband had lost his job and returned to live with his parents. The divorce settlement was finalized with him owing significant damages he would probably never pay. We remained in our secured apartment, gradually expanding our world again. Sarah made new friends at school. Aiden rejoined soccer with a different team. We continued our twice-monthly adventures, but stayed closer to home. The hypervigilance remained, might always remain, but we were learning to coexist with it. A year after the break-in, I watched my children laughing at a school play. They had endured so much, demonstrated such resilience. The path ahead was still uncertain, but we had confronted the worst and emerged whole. That night, as we shared pizza and played board games, I realized we had discovered something precious in our survival, an unbreakable bond forged in adversity. The fear would always linger at the edges, the possibility that Elizabeth might return, that my ex-husband might resurface. But we had proven we could face anything together. We had learned to trust our instincts, to speak up when something felt amiss, to choose each other above all else. Most importantly, we had learned that family isn't about blood or legal ties, but about who stands by you when the world crumbles. As I tucked my children into bed that night, checking locks and alarms out of habit, I felt a cautious optimism. We had survived manipulation, deception, betrayal, and danger. We had adapted and overcome. Whatever came next, we would face it together, stronger for having survived the storm. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Elizabeth's mother stood at our apartment building's entrance, the doorman calling up for permission. Against every instinct, I agreed to meet her in the lobby. She looked different from our last encounter, healthier somehow, wearing a simple business suit instead of prison attire. She handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside were Elizabeth's recent therapy session transcripts, legally obtained and shared with her consent. The therapist had documented Elizabeth's elaborate fantasies about our family, detailed plans she had made, and most disturbingly, a collection of photos she had taken of us over the past year, hundreds of them. Us at the grocery store, Aiden at soccer practice, Sarah walking to school, me at work. Some were taken from distances that implied she had been following us across state lines. Elizabeth's mother explained that she had discovered these during a room search after Elizabeth had another breakdown. She had attacked a classmate who reminded her of Sarah, screaming about stolen families. The girl's parents were pressing charges. Elizabeth was back in psychiatric care, this time involuntarily committed after being deemed a danger to others. I inquired why she was telling me this. She produced another document, a legal petition. She was requesting to terminate her parental rights and have Elizabeth placed in a long-term residential treatment facility. She needed my testimony about the stalking and break-in to strengthen her case. The facility was in Maine, specializing in treating violent, obsessive behaviors in teenagers. It would keep Elizabeth contained and in treatment until she turned 21. That afternoon, my lawyer reviewed everything. She stated testifying would help ensure Elizabeth received the treatment she needed while keeping us safe, but it would also mean reliving everything in court again. Sarah and Aiden would need to testify too. I left the decision to them. They did not hesitate. Sarah said they would do whatever it took to end this permanently. Aiden nodded, squeezing his sister's hand. The hearing was scheduled for the following month. In the interim, life continued its new rhythm. Sarah had started dating a boy from her drama club, a kind young man named Marcus who walked her to her car daily. Aiden's soccer team advanced to regionals. I had received a promotion at my new job. We were constructing something positive again. Then my ex-husband resurfaced, not in person, but through his lawyer. He was suing for damages, claiming we had destroyed his relationship with his daughter. The lawsuit was absurd, but it meant more legal expenses. My lawyer countered with our own suit for harassment, assault, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She was confident we would prevail, but confidence did not cover bills. John stepped up again, organizing a fundraiser through his church. I protested, but he would not hear of it. The community response overwhelmed me. People who had heard our story through John and Ally contributed what they could. Sarah's drama teacher organized a benefit performance. Aiden's soccer team held a car wash. Within 2 weeks, we had raised enough to cover the immediate legal costs. The night before Elizabeth's hearing, she escaped from the psychiatric facility. The police called at 2 a.m. She had broken a window and climbed out during a shift change. They had officers searching, but she had a 6-hour head start. We packed immediately and went to John's house, the entire family sleeping in the living room with baseball bats within reach. She did not come for us. Instead, she went to her father. The police found her at his parents' house, where she had broken in through a basement window. She was in his old room, surrounded by photos of our family she had printed from social media, speaking to them as if we were present. She had cut her hair to match Sarah's and was wearing clothes similar to what Sarah wore in one of the photos. My ex-husband arrived while the police were there. Instead of being concerned about his daughter's mental state, he started screaming at the officers, claiming they were harassing his family. He attempted to prevent them from taking Elizabeth, physically obstructing their path. They arrested him for obstruction. His parents watched from the doorway, finally comprehending what their son had become. At the hearing, Elizabeth was brought in wearing restraints. She had been sedated but kept trying to make eye contact with Aiden, mouthing, "I love you," whenever she could. Her mother's petition was supported by multiple psychiatrists who testified about Elizabeth's dangerous fixation and escalating violence. The judge did not hesitate. Elizabeth was remanded to the secure facility in Maine until age 21, with possible extensions if she remained a threat. Elizabeth screamed as they led her away, not at her mother or the judge, but at me. She said I had stolen her life, and that she would get out someday and take back what was hers. The bailiffs dragged her out as she continued screaming threats. Her mother collapsed in tears, apologizing repeatedly. I told her she was doing the right thing, the brave thing. She was saving all of us, including Elizabeth. My ex-husband's trial came next. His psychiatric evaluation had revealed more than just narcissistic personality disorder. He showed signs of shared delusional disorder, having absorbed and reinforced Elizabeth's fantasies about our family. His lawyer attempted to use this for an insanity defense, but the prosecutor argued he had been sane enough to hire lawyers and plan harassment campaigns. The trial was swift. Multiple restraining order violations, assault, battery, stalking, and conspiracy to commit harassment. The evidence was overwhelming. His own family testified against him, Nishi describing how he had become obsessed with reclaiming us, spending hours planning legal strategies and tracking our movements. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison and mandatory psychiatric treatment. With both of them confined, we could finally breathe. But the children still struggled. Aiden experienced panic attacks when strangers approached him. Sarah installed 3 different lock applications on her phone and constantly checked them. We continued therapy, working through the trauma as a family. 6 months passed peacefully. Sarah graduated high school with honors despite everything. She had been accepted to several colleges, but chose one just an hour away, not ready to be too far from family. Aiden made the varsity soccer team as a freshman. I was promoted again at work, finally earning enough to settle the legal debts. Then came the letter from prison, not from Elizabeth or my ex-husband, but from Alexandra. She wished to apologize in person, to make amends for her part in enabling her son's behavior. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, John waiting in his car outside, just in case. She looked older, defeated. She told me how she had always known something was amiss with Elizabeth, how the girl had harmed other children when she was younger, but they had concealed it, changed schools, made excuses. She had thought her son could mend Elizabeth with enough affection. Instead, he had worsened her, feeding her delusions because they aligned with his own need for control. Alexandra produced a check. It was for a substantial sum, enough to cover all our remaining legal fees, and then some. She said it was from selling her son's assets, that we deserved compensation for what we had endured. I tried to refuse, but she insisted it was the least she could do for failing to protect children when she should have. That money became the down payment on a house in a gated community with excellent security. The children each received their own room again, with proper locks and alarm systems. We adopted a large dog, a German Shepherd mix named Max, who slept in the hallway between their rooms. He was trained as a guard dog, but gentle with the family, exactly what we needed. A year later, we received word that Elizabeth had attacked a staff member at the facility, attempting to escape again. Her commitment was extended indefinitely. My ex-husband was denied parole after engaging in multiple altercations in prison, apparently still ranting about conspiracies against him. Their absence from our lives felt more permanent with each passing month. Sarah thrived in college, studying psychology with a focus on assisting abuse victims. She said our experience, as terrible as it was, showed her what she wanted to do with her life. She started dating someone new, a young man who understood her need for security and never overstepped boundaries. Aiden grew more self-assured, his panic attacks becoming rare. He started mentoring younger children in soccer, teaching them self-defense techniques alongside sports skills. We continued our twice-monthly adventures, but now they felt like celebrations rather than escapes. We hiked mountains, visited museums, tried escape rooms where being hypervigilant was actually an advantage. The children still checked locks and looked over their shoulders, but they also laughed freely, made plans for the future, lived their lives. 3 years after that terrible night when everything erupted, we held a different kind of family meeting, not in crisis, but in celebration. Sarah was graduating college. Aiden had been offered a soccer scholarship. I had met someone, a widower with his own teenage son, who comprehended the significance of boundaries and blended family dynamics. We discussed the future, about healing, about how far we had come. The fear never completely vanished. Elizabeth would eventually age out of the facility. My ex-husband would complete his sentence. But we had built something they could not demolish, a family forged in crisis, strengthened by survival, bonded by unconditional love and fierce protection. We had learned to trust our instincts, to speak up when something felt wrong, to choose each other above all else. That night, as we looked through photo albums, not the damaged ones, but new ones we had created, Sarah pointed out how different we all appeared, not just older but stronger somehow. Aiden agreed, jesting that we should write a book about surviving psycho-step relatives. I chuckled, but there was truth in it. We had survived something that should have shattered us. Instead, it had revealed just how unbreakable we were together. The twice-monthly adventures continued, now including my new partner and his son when schedules permitted, but the original 3 of us still had our sacred time, honoring the promise I had made years ago. Those outings had saved us in a way, preserving our bond when everything else tried to tear us apart. Sarah still drove sometimes, though not in crisis but in comfort, singing along to the radio as Aiden played navigator. We had won our freedom, not through legal victories or restraining orders, though those helped. We had won it by choosing each other, by refusing to let manipulation and violence define us, by constructing something beautiful from the remnants of something toxic. The scars remained, would always remain, but they had become proof of survival rather than symbols of pain. Our family hadn't ended with tragedy. It had begun with it and grown stronger every day.